Now let's be really precise about what skepticism is showing. That is, we say we don't have knowledge of all these things, but when we're thinking about it, let's go back to the three conditions of knowledge. What condition is not met according to these arguments? And remember, knowledge, we're thinking justify true belief. We know that that's not quite right, but it's pretty close. So the question is, why don't we have knowledge of the external world and the past and the future? Why don't we have any empirical knowledge? Is it because we don't believe things about the past, the future, the external world? Well, no, we have a lot of beliefs about it. Even the staunchest skeptic, the one person who agrees with all those conclusions, thinks that, believes all the same propositions that we do. Second, are we saying that they're not true? Well, if we were saying they weren't true, we'd be really saying something about metaphysics. If we're saying that they're not true, we'd say reality isn't like we perceive it to be, which is a pretty strong claim, because we're really trying to make a much weaker claim about skepticism. Not that that's not the way reality is, that we don't sometimes peer into reality, but rather it's not good enough to give us knowledge. It's not a good enough basis. What we have as evidence is not a good enough basis to have knowledge, which leads us to the third condition, or the first one, the way that is, we're not justified in believing any propositions about the future, the past, and the external world. I mean, that's at least the conclusion that we've reached. We're not justified. In other words, we do have evidence. We do believe it. It could even be true. But the issue is with regard to the past, the future, the external world, and just about every contingent proposition, we don't have enough evidence, which is what those three arguments were intended to demonstrate. But now there's something kind of missing, because you've all seen the arguments, but no one's convinced of the truth of skepticism. Everybody still thinks they have knowledge. Well, but it's not good enough to walk away. I mean, we've gone through a little segment on analyzing arguments, we've learned a little bit about logic, which helps us. So we better, if we're not convinced of the truth of the conclusions of those arguments, we really need to go back and look at them more carefully, because either they better be invalid, or we better find a premise that is unwarranted, that is false. And the only thing I got to mention is, if we kind of roll back to the arguments, just follow me through a second. Oh wait, we were just right over here. If you look at the arguments, premise 1, you'd say that's P. Premise 2, if the first if P, then I don't know, then Q. So therefore, I said you get Q. Then if Q, then R, no one knows anything. Therefore, R. I mean, it looks like it just uses modus ponens, and it's the same thing is true as I flip back and show you guys each of these arguments. The meteorite strike, same logical form. Earth created 5 minutes ago, same logical form. So at least if we're going to find the reason to deny the conclusion, which everybody wants to, we better find a premise that is something we cannot accept, something we have reason for thinking is false.